Good afternoon, YouTube. This is Chuck, and it's Sunday, January 26th, 2025, about 2:30 in the afternoon, and I'm back out here working on my old truck again. And so if you saw my last video, you know I'm trying to diagnose a no-start condition because I tried to start it. It ran for about 30 seconds, and it died, and I have not been able to get it to restart since. So in my last video on this subject, I did quite a bit of diagnostic work on it. And when something like this happens, it's going to fall into one of two categories. It's either going to be an ignition problem of some kind, or it's going to be a fuel problem of some kind. Well, I started out looking for an ignition problem, and then I made a test on the fuel rail pressure, and decided that it must be a fuel problem. And when I ended the video, I was still trying to chase down a fueling problem. I thought maybe the fuel pump had gone bad, even though it was a brand new one. I just put it in back in May. Well, after when doing my research, after I made that video, I realized that I did not perform the test correctly on the fuel system. And so we're going to redo it right now, the way it's supposed to be done, and we're going to see if we get a different result. I think we will. So I'm going to put you right here. Okay, and see this little thing right there just to the left of the dipstick? That's where we're going to be working. But I got to go turn the key on. And what I have to do is I have to take the little cap off of this thing right here. And that's a Schrader valve on the fuel rail. Now the way that thing should work is I should get fuel spraying out of there. Now I got gloves on, and I also got an old washcloth. I'm going to try to catch that because it's probably going to try to shoot gas all over the place. So let me push down on this and let's see what happens. Okay, we still did not get any fuel out of there. Okay, that tells me that it has to be a fuel system problem. Because with the key on, we should have got a big spray of fuel coming out of there, and we didn't get anything. So I thought that was going to turn out different. I thought we were going to find something different, and I'm going to check a couple other things. But for right now, I think we can pretty much say that it's some kind of a fuel delivery issue. I didn't get a bath, so that's both a good and a bad thing. It's a good thing that I didn't get a gasoline bath, but it's a bad thing that it still got me going down that path. So I'm going to shut you off for a little bit, and I'll bring you back here in a little bit. I got a couple other errands I need to go run, then I'll come back and work on this again a little later. Well, once again, I'm back, and that first segment kind of threw me for a loop because that's not what I expected to happen. And but as long as I'm out here and as long as I got the stuff, I'm going to check and make sure this coil is going to work. And originally when I looked at the coil, I thought it looked pretty old, but looking again at it, and the coil is this thing right here. It actually doesn't look that old. I didn't replace it, but maybe it's been replaced before. But in looking at some YouTube videos, I was trying to figure out how I could test that thing. And there is a way to test it. And you need three things to test it. And the one thing you need is you need a test light, and you need the old style with a bulb, not the new style with the LED, and that's what this is. All right, I've got an inline spark tester, which is what this thing is, and I've got a push button over here, right there, that goes over to the starter solenoid over there by the battery. And what that lets me do is that lets me crank the engine. So the key is on, and so the first thing we need to check is we need to check for 12 volts on the two wires going into the bottom of the coil. Now the red, we both should get 12 volts out of both of them, and I'll tell you how that works. But let's see if I can get my test light down here and see if I can show you what we're doing here. Okay, see, we got a light there. That tells us we got 12 volts there, and on this side as well. We should have 12 volts there too, if I can get, there you go, we've got 12 volts there too. Right now, they're going to behave a little bit differently. Now the way this thing actually works is whenever the key's on, this red side here has power. Now the other side here actually goes through the engine control module, which is this little gray thing down there on the fender. Let's see if I can point that out to you. This thing right here. And what that does is it grounds it. And whenever it grounds it, then it the coil will fire off a high voltage spike that will end up going to the... Now I got this thing tangled up here. How did I do that? So anyway, it'll send a high voltage spike. There you go. It'll send a high voltage spike that'll go down to the distributor, and then of course the distributor, what else distributes to the various cylinders. So anyway, this thing here should have 12 volts. All right, now if I can get this thing to stay in this spot, there we go. Now, when I crank that thing should get a little bit dimmer. And the reason why it should get a little dimmer is because the starter's pulling a lot of the current. So let's see what happens. Okay, and we saw that thing sparking. All right, and I'll get back to that in a minute. But now, if we put it on this one, that should show the pulses where the engine management computer is trying to fire the coil. So let's see what happens there. Yep. See the pulse? So that means that the thing is working correctly. So let's pull that back out of here and set it back over here out of the way. And then let's look at this. Let's look at this thing. Now this thing should be firing off. Yeah. Okay, that tells me the coil is actually working. So that tells me that the coil is not the problem. All right? And because a little bit ago when we checked the fuel rail here, right there, and we pulled that thing off and we didn't get any fuel out of there even with the key on, that tells me that there's some reason or other there's not fuel not getting to that fuel rail. So that's a pretty significant thing, and it tells us a lot. So my next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get down underneath there and I'm going to pull the fuel line off the fuel filter and then turn the key on and see if it pumps fuel out. Now, is it a possibility that it's a clogged up fuel filter? Yeah, it's pretty remote, but I guess it is possible. So we'll have to check that. And if that turns out, if we don't get fuel through the filter, then the next thing we'll do is pull the line off on the other side of the filter and see if we get fuel from the pump itself. If we don't get fuel from the pump itself, then it's definitely a fuel pump because it's trying to run. The last time we checked it, when my neighbor Richard was here helping me, we could hear the pump running. So apparently there's something broke inside there, so it's running, but it's not pumping fuel, if that's the issue. And we're going to find that out. So I'll be back with you again here in another little bit for another segment as soon as I get set up to do that. This thing will sure make you scratch your head sometimes. Okay, this is our next step. We're down underneath the truck, and that's the fuel filter. And as you can see, it looks pretty clean because I replaced it back in 2020. And this truck spends most of its time on pavement. But the fuel supply for it comes from this side. This is the line coming from the tank. Goes through there. This is the one that goes up to the fuel rail. So in order to test it, what we're going to do is we got to pop this little safety catch off. There, we got that off. Set that down here. And then there's a special little kind of tool, and I've got one, and this is what it, see if I can hold the camera here and show you what it looks like. It's just about a simple thing. And basically what it does is it reaches back in here behind this, except I think it's the other end, and it fits up inside there, and it releases that forward quick release coupling. And I've got a different kind of tool because I don't think this one's going to fit. So anyway, it has to go back inside here, and it releases the quick release, and then this part here pops right off. But I got 2 or 3 different kinds of these, and I've used this one before on these, but for some reason it acts like it doesn't want to behave this time. So I'm going to go get a different kind. But what I'm going to do, just to let you know, is I'm going to pop this side here off, which is downstream from the filter, and then I'm going to turn the key on to see if the pump will pump fuel through it. If it doesn't, then I'll go over on this side and I'll pop this one off and see if it'll pump fuel through that. Now, if it doesn't pump fuel through that, then obviously it has to be the pump. That's all that's left. Because I don't think there's going to be a clog. The fuel tank is right over there, right up above the differential. And so I'm pretty sure that you're not going to have any kind of a block between there and there. So that's going to mean that the tank's going to have to come down. And I'm certainly not looking forward to doing that, but I did it before. I'm sure I can do it again. So right now I got to go get a different tool to get that thing apart. And then we'll get out from under there and turn the key on and see if it blows a bunch of fuel all over the place. Because we just turn it on briefly and turn it back off again. Because we'll know real fast if it's flowing gas or not. So I'll be back with you again in a little bit and then see what I can show you. Okay, so we got that off. And I used the little different kind of, there's a little doodad I used to kit it off. It's a special little tool. There's a whole set of them for different sizes. They don't cost much, but boy, it's sure tough if you don't have that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the key on and see if that thing shoots gas out of there. So I'm going to see if I can do that. See if I can hold you guys down here. Gave a little shot of gas, but then it quit, and it's just barely dripping. All right, so let me turn it back off. Okay, darn thing dripped in my face when I got it loose. And so the next thing to do is pull the fuel line off on the other side of the filter and see if we get anything different there. Sorry about that. Got a mouthful, got gasoline in my mouth. Hate that. Back with you shortly. Well, it's actually a couple days later, and we had a weather system move in, so the weather's been bad, so I haven't gotten back out there to work on the old truck. But when we left on the last segment, I had removed the fuel line between the fuel filter and the engine and turned the key on, and all it did is spit a little spit of gasoline out, and the fuel pump quit running. Well, at the time, I said that the next step would be to go ahead and disconnect the filter entirely and then see if fuel would come out of the line between the fuel filter and the tank. In other words, the inlet of the fuel filter. And, well, I spent better part of the afternoon out there trying to get that little coupling uncoupled, and apparently it's damaged, and it won't, I could not get it to come loose. Despite my best efforts and my extensive vocabulary of profanity, it just didn't want to work. And but while I was doing that, I got to thinking that there was another possibility that I hadn't really considered. And the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. And so before the next step, in order to, if I was to take that filter off, when you get one of those things that sticks, the next step is actually to cut off that inlet with your handy-dandy recip saw. And then all you have left is that little pipe stuck in there, and then you got to try to fish that out. If you can't get it out that way, then you're looking at replacing that fuel line, which is a big, huge thing. So while I was thinking about it, the more I thought about it, the more I thought it made sense. And that is that before I go any farther with that, what I really need to do is I need to power up that fuel pump from an external 12-volt source so it doesn't run through the truck, and see if the fuel pump will run then. So how am I going to do that, you might add? Well, let me show you. Now I could run a cord all the way up to the truck battery, or I can use my little battery jump booster, and just run power from here up to the tank. Okay, well, when I changed out that fuel pump a while back, it came with a new connector, just in case the old connector didn't work. And basically this gray wire here is the power to the fuel pump, and that black wire right there is the ground. So if I can make a jumper that goes between there and power it with this, then I could actually see if that pump would run. And if that pump will run, then what that tells me is that the truck is not telling the pump to run. And that would be a computer issue. So what I'm going to do is a while back, I made this is an old vacuum cleaner cord actually. And what I did is I made up this little extension cord using that old vacuum cleaner cord. And I did that because it's got the USB connectors, and I use this to power up my USB stuff when I need to charge something. And but what I found out is I used this whole vacuum cleaner cord on that, and I don't really need to. All I really need, I have this red thing back here on the back side of my workbench that has a 6 feet long, and it has all kinds of outlets, but it doesn't have USB. So what I can do is I can shorten this cord up and only use about a couple of feet on that, and then that'll actually get this out here where I can plug stuff in. So I'm going to repurpose that cord right there, and I'm going to make a jumper that ties onto that hooks onto that, and that way I'll be able to try powering up that fuel pump from an external source. Now, if I do that, it'll prove a couple things. Number one, it'll prove that there's nothing wrong with the fuel pump, and I still have a hard time thinking that there is because it was brand new last May. It'll also it'll squirt water through that, or gas through that filter, and that'll prove to me that the filter's not clogged up. So if that's what's going on, then I can hook that filter back up to the truck, and then when I power up that fuel pump, the truck should start and run. So once again, that'll prove that it's an electronics issue, and it'll also allow me to move the truck because I need to move it from where it's at. You know, we're getting ready to leave on a trip, and I can't get in there and hook up to my travel trailer with the old truck there, so I got to move it one way or another. So anyway, that's the next step. The storm's supposed to blow through today, and so I'll be getting out there to try that. Well, while I've been mulling over how to do all that, of course, I've watched a few more YouTube videos, and I found a couple that said that one of the issues when the computer goes bad is that it does one or two things to the fuel pump. It either cuts it off so it doesn't work at all, bingo, or it makes it run all the time. Well, when I had my friend Richard over here helping me on a couple segments ago, the fuel pump would come on briefly when he turned the key on, and that made me think the fuel pump something was wrong with the fuel pump. Well, what there is there's a circuit in there that does that, and it only runs it for about a second or second and a half, and that's probably totally separate from the other circuitry in there that makes the motor run. So I'm going to try that. That's the next step I'm going to do. I'm going to fab up this cord and get it ready to go, and then as soon as the weather lets me, I'll crawl up underneath there and unplug the power from that fuel pump, plug my jumper cord in there, and try to run it and see if I can make the fuel pump run. So I'll bring you along for that, but that's where we stand on this right now. So the journey on this repair project continues. It's definitely challenging, and if the fuel pump works, then I'll know it's the computer. If the fuel pump doesn't work, then I'll know it's not. So what's the step if it turns out to be the computer? Well, I got to pull the computer, and I did that before, and actually that computer is a remanufactured unit that I got back in 2020 when I did all the work on the truck because I found the computer that was in it at the time was bad. And I've learned a whole lot more about them since then. And so, could that remanufactured computer be bad? Yeah, it could. And there's a possibility even. There's about 10 different kinds for that truck of computers, and it all depends on a bunch of factors. The engine size, the type of transmission, the two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, so I'm not 100% sure that it even has the right computer in it. I didn't know the difference at the time. I do now, and fortunately, when my original computer went bad, I was smart enough to take pictures of it. So I have the part number on the original computer. So I went and checked to see if I could get another one online, and I couldn't because I have an unusual engine transmission combination apparently. And so what I'm probably going to do if I have to pull that computer out is I'm going to take it apart and I'm going to take a look at it. And I'm going to seriously see if it's something I can fix. So that'll be a challenge in itself, and I'll do that on another video. But for right now, so I think I'm going to call it a wrap for this one. And this has gone on for over 20 minutes. And I'm going to call this part 2 of this series. And so I'll pick it up the next step when I get out and back under the truck again. And I'll call that part 3. So for right now, let me just tell you, as I always do, take care of each other, love each other, and be thankful for the life the Lord's given you. And I'll be back with you again with another one. And boy, this thing's sure been a head scratcher. So right now, let me give you a look at my messy workbench. And until I talk to you again, I'll just tell you, peace out.